It's absolutely lovely to be here in Arizona. It is boiling hot, and I went outside for about 5 minutes this morning and almost got burnt, so that's my done. I'm delighted to be here with Hugh, Howard, and Komal. We are going to be talking about food security, which is obviously an enormous topic, has implications for water use, energy, and we've got about, 30 minutes to do it in, so it's going to be fast and furious, I'm afraid. But to start off with, I'm sure many of you are already highly aware that we're probably going to have about 2 billion more people in the world by 2050. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization reckons that we probably need to increase agricultural production 70% by then. There's some kind of quirks to that stat that perhaps we'll have time to go into, and I imagine many of the people on the stage here know more about that than I do. So without further ado, I'd love to give everyone perhaps a minute each or so to introduce yourselves and talk about the aspects of food security that you're hoping to cover today. Who's starting with you?
Thank you, Miranda. DSM is the biggest company that none of you have ever heard of. So I'm very confident that all of you use our products every day. We're the world's largest nutritional ingredient company. And amongst other reasons, we sit back sometimes and we recognize that somewhere in the world, a mother loses a child every 6 seconds because of nutrition. And when you're the biggest nutrition company in the world, you have an ethical obligation to do something about that. So within DSM, we work through a number of different partnerships. We started with the World Food Program to help improve the nutritional content of the food that they deliver in their school feeding programs. And like all of you, corporations also have to show some learning agility. So we evolved from there to work in an organization called Partners in Food Solutions, where we enable all of our employees to volunteer their time remotely from their desks to work with food processors in sub-Saharan Africa, to help bring the technology from the Western world to some of the folks producing food where food isn't needed most. And that evolution continues. So just last year, we're in the middle of constructing one of the world's largest food manufacturing plants in Kigali, Rwanda. And it'll be a plant that'll have the capacity to feed every child in Rwanda, plus. So, thank you. So this is just a little snippet in the time that we have, how a company, DSM, that literally stands for Dutch State Mines, has evolved over the last century to do something meaningful. Thanks.
I think we might have to share microphones, I'm afraid.
Easily done. I think I'm the Grim Reaper here today. The situation with nutrition security, quality, and food safety is so dire in the world, not just in the third world, but also in the first industrial world. 4.5 billion people suffer aflatoxin poisoning every day. It's probably something you've never heard about, but it's a chronic and collective fungal pathogen which will cause stunting. Stunting is when you do not develop 100% of your intellectual, physical, or economic capability. That is 37% in Africa and 48% in India. 80% of Indian population suffer some form of anemia. 25% of all the water used in the world for agriculture is wasted in the field, in transportation, thrown away. So imagine you only get to use 25% or 75% of the water that you now use, and then try to make it go farther. We have no hope of reaching the production numbers that were referred to at the beginning to feed the population of the world with current technology. The only land we have left to use, unless we cut down every bit of forest in the world, is abandoned land. And there is no major institute on earth that has dedicated its heart and soul to taking abandoned land and make it useful again. So it's a really dire moment. I mean, I wake up every moment I wake up, all I can do is think about what can be done to forestall the fiasco of nutrition and food insecurity around the world. But you have to fix the problem, right? You wake up in the morning and you say to yourself, you put on your pants and you go to work. And in the case of Africa, we're currently working on 101 food crops simultaneously. This is the backbone of Africa. It's an uncommon collaboration, everyone from IBM to Google to Mars to Cyverse, which is based here at this university, to the Beijing Genomic Institute is working to figure out how to use the best and brightest technologies in the world, which are sequencing, assembling and annotation of genomes, and then training people in Africa to use that information to breed new nutritious plants. That's the fun part, right? That's easy. We all love discovery. But then there's this thing called translation. How's it going to work? And then there's even something worse called scale, which is completely boring to most inventive scientists. We never care about scale. But that's where the game is won. Every one of you ought to become a plant scientist. It really is the future of the world more than anything else. There's not enough of them. I could count all the carrot breeders in the world could fit on this dais we're sitting on. And it means going into the field and taking a different view of the world than people have today. But I'm not optimistic because the political will to do these things does not exist in most places. And nutrition security is used as a tool of war. Whether it was the Second World War with the Nazis starving the people in the northern part of the Netherlands to see if stunting was generational and could be transferred genetically, or to modern day warfare where we starve people to make them commit to agree to our point of view. So the situation with food, water, and then I'll add this other little commentary, which is on the quality and food safety of what you eat every day. I think you'd be alarmed if you went into most factories around the world. Not DSM's factory. It's pharmaceutical grade. But most food factories, especially in the third world, are laden with salmonella, E. coli, listeria, everything you can think of. And it's just by the grace of God these people make it through the day and don't die from food poisoning. So the challenge is immense. Really, I can only tell you the challenge is immense. And it's very nice when the young man before me spoke, talked about sharing and all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, there's nothing to share in most of these places. You can't just live alone on rice and wheat and maize and soybeans that we want to send around the world because we produce a lot of it. You actually have to have nutritious fruits and vegetables to make your life worthwhile.
Brilliant. Komal.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for staying alive here and for having me. It's been awesome. And my name is Komal. I am the founder of Copia. We are solving the world's dumbest problem, which is hunger. And to really understand that, you have to kind of understand how I began. And it started when I was a senior, actually like many of you, in college at Berkeley. And I was walking down the street where I encountered a homeless man begging for food, which if you've ever been in the Bay Area is a pretty common sight, but something about him compelled me to stop and invite him to join me for lunch. And during lunch, just as you're sitting across from me, he was just scarfing down his food. So he was really hungry. It wasn't a ploy or anything. And then in between bites, he told me a story. He said, "My name is John. I just came back from my second tour in Iraq. I've been waiting weeks for my benefits to kick in, and they haven't. And I haven't eaten in 3 days." And that hit home for me because I was a few months away from deploying as an officer in the United States Navy. So I'm sitting right across from a veteran who had given the most selfless sacrifice he could for our country, only to come home to face another battle, which was hunger and homelessness. And then to add insult to injury, right across the street, Berkeley's dining hall was throwing away thousands of pounds of food every single day. So it was this very stark reality of those who have and waste, and those who are in need and starve, and those two people literally right across the street from each other. And so when I started this, it wasn't like I wanted to go start a startup or anything like that. I just wanted to solve a particular problem that was affecting, the community right outside of my college. And, I asked our dining hall, I said, "What do you guys do with your leftover food?" And they said, "We throw it away." I was like, "Why would you throw it away? You could go literally right across the street to People's Park and donate this food." And they said, "Because of liability, we don't donate food." I was like, "Yeah, because homeless people's high-powered attorneys are standing right by just to sue you." I think I was just as sassy then. And I went online and I found out that there's a Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act that protects all donors, regardless of whether you're an organization, corporation, or individual, from any liability when you donate your food. And so I printed it out. I took it to our executive director of our dining hall, and I said, "We have to do something with our food. We have to donate our food." And within 7 minutes of that conversation and my amazing persistence, he agreed, and we started the nation's first food recovery organization on a college campus. And that was essentially just students, just like you guys, recovering excess food from our dining halls, our on-campus events, our stadium, our arena, and then redistributing it directly to shelters in the community. And it was great, except it was incredibly inefficient. So one day, right when we had launched the partnership, I got a call from our dining hall, and I'm in class, and so I step out, it's the 501 number, and I answer, and they say, hey, no one came to this event, so we have 500 gourmet sandwiches left over. They need to be picked up in 2 hours, otherwise we're throwing them away. I was like, great. So I go inside class, grab my bag, and I run across campus, and I'm trying to book a zip car while I'm doing this, and I go through all the one-way streets up to our loading dock, and I load all of this food in. But remember, this is perishable food, so it needs to move as quickly as possible. So I'm blasting the AC, and it takes a half an hour just to load the trunk, and then I call all the shelters nearby. A third of them don't answer the phone. A third of them say, hey, no, we're good for today, thanks. And the last third say, hey, yeah, I could take 10 sandwiches or 15 sandwiches. Like, awesome, now I have 475 sandwiches. And I'm sitting on the side of the road, and I'm so frustrated. I'm like, it shouldn't be this hard to do a good thing. It shouldn't be this hard to do the right thing. And so I'm looking at the app, and I'm trying to extend my reservation because the time's up, and I can't because someone has already booked it. So it was like everything that could go wrong definitely did. But I remember looking at the app and thinking, how cool would it be if people who have food could say, hey, I have food, and people who need food could say, hey, I need food, and we could match these two people in real time and clear the marketplace. And that's essentially what Copia does. We're an online and mobile platform that enables businesses, event organizers, corporations of all types, grocery stores, et cetera, request pickups of their excess food, and then we have built technology and a logistics framework that will send drivers to pick up that food and then redistribute it based on the shelter's needs and times and operations. And to date, we've fed over 700,000 people. We're on our way to feeding 1 million this year. And so I think the premise of why I said we're solving the world's dumbest problem is that, in a world with so much abundance, and especially in our country, in the United States, we are so fortunate that we have so much. And in a country like ours, hunger shouldn't exist. It shouldn't exist anywhere, but it has no reason to exist here. And so we think that this is also the most solvable problem of our time. Maybe some panelists might disagree with me, but I think here in the US, it's definitely a distribution issue, and that is what we're looking to solve.
Brilliant. Komal, thank you so much. I'm very interested slightly in kind of two aspects of this. One is that, you have created this platform technology that we're all familiar with. Howard, I know that you and I, crucially mentioned a little bit earlier about the distinction precisely between, food security and nutrition security and why those are important. Initially, sort of on this, I wonder what your thoughts are concerning other technologies such as kind of precision planting, improved smarter irrigation systems that are increasing yield. And I appreciate that this is, not the kind of crux of your argument about how we need to tackle food in the future. But have there been, good developments, in your opinion, thus far on those fronts?
Well, the technology of agriculture has continued to improve dramatically. Water use efficiency, yield, nutrient use efficiency, reduction of pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. Everyone can agree with that. Whether you like biotechnology or not is not a question here today, but those technologies, as reported recently by the National Academies of Science, Medicine, and Engineering, are safe to eat. And there's been 1 billion years of food consumed now of meals with those technologies. But all of that works if you have a tractor and you have access to irrigation and you can put an irrigation system in and those sorts of things. And the fact is, most of the world where we're talking about the biggest problems, and it does turn out that 7% of the United States population is stunted according to the National Academy of Sciences. So even in the most robust country in the world, and we won't even talk about the level of obesity in Mississippi, which far outstrips most parts of the world because of their diet. So yes, we can improve incrementally, but the yields are flat in every major food crop, completely flat. It wasn't true in 1950 to about 2010 or 2012, but the most recent study that was done by a group in Minnesota called NCIA with 12,500 data points of research, it makes it very bleak. So what are you going to do? Well, first of all, if the food were more nutritious, it would be much more useful. And in the question recently with the presidents of Monsanto, Bayer Bioscience, and Pioneer, some of the biggest seed companies on earth, whether we like them or not, leave that in your pocket for a while. But they have not worked on nutrition in 25 or 30 years. So here are the biggest companies in the world delivering the most seed, and they won't even work on the most fundamental piece, which is nutrition. I mean, what the hell's wrong with these people? I mean, really, you have to ask yourself.
Hugh, sort of picking up on Howard's point about interesting improvements have been made in GPS connected tractors and things like that. But as Howard says, not everybody has those things. I think only about 4% of arable land in sub-Saharan Africa is actually irrigated. What are the challenges that DSM sees when trying to, in Africa, kind of provide nutrition to people? I mean, I met with the head of the World Food Programme in December. We were saying we were both at COP21, and one of the things she said is actually timing the provision of that is very important. But you have other...
Yeah, I mean, first let me say I'm incredibly optimistic about the future. I mean, we've taken 1 billion people out of abject poverty in the last 20 years, which is probably one of the most remarkable feats in human history. I mean, we have hundreds of millions of less starving people today than we did just 5 years ago. So there are solutions to the issues of nutrition, to food, to energy, to water, to climate change, but those solutions will be science. But I'm going to talk about something completely different as far as a solution in Africa. What we're doing in our new venture there called Africa Improved Foods is to create new business models. So at the invitation of the government of Rwanda, we came in. They have a serious stunting problem in the country. They invited us in. We found other partners, right? It's a difficult place for a private publicly traded company to invest. So we found other partners like the CDC in the UK, IFC, part of the World Bank, to be our shareholders. We're building this new plant, and we're sourcing all of our raw materials from local smallholder farmers. Now, this is a radical departure from the past. So instead of buying, soya, buying maize from Western Europe, from the United States, we're going to buy it from folks in Rwanda. That gets them cash. With that cash, they can buy new seed, they can buy new equipment, they can afford new technology with respect to irrigation. Now, this all ties back to the World Food Program as well, because 60% of the product that we produce in this facility will be sold to the World Food Program. That enables them to source from somebody in Africa as well, rather again than buying from Western Europe or the United States. This keeps cash in the country. There's a virtual economic cycle. And when you talk to the folks at the World Food Program next time, ask them. They will tell you this is the beginning of the end. This is what they've worked for the last 50 years to try to put themselves out of business. So in addition to science and technology and innovation, new business models and new types of public-private partnerships will ultimately be the solution to some of Africa's challenges.
How difficult is it to evaluate the effects of such a program? Because, for example, fertilizer subsidies in much of Africa are fairly useless because it's siphoned off. There isn't the kind of institutional framework that we need to support these. How are you measuring what you're doing?
I mean, this place is just under construction at the moment. If I go back 2 cycles to our initial partnership with the World Food Program that began in 2007, there are certainly metrics that we can measure that would show our success. The number of stunted children in school feeding programs in a number of different African countries has gone down significantly. What we offer the World Food Program are these little micronutrient sachets. So if any of you are familiar with World Food Program school feeding programs, they have that sort of iconic red cup. And in that red cup, they'll put a corn, soya, maize blend that gives plenty of calories but not nutritional content necessary for a child to reach their full potential, either cognitively or physically. We at DSM, because we're such a large nutrition company, can bring these packets that can be used as a sort of a point of serving option. And we've done metrics, we've done measurements of how children have developed in these programs and can see, literally tens of millions of them have had improved outcomes, both physically and cognitively.
That's fantastic. I mean, Komal, I imagine partnerships are absolutely vital to what you're doing as well at the moment.
Yeah, so we take high quality gourmet food from businesses that are large scale. So as an example, and you might not think it, but we partnered with the Super Bowl and the NFL, and so I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, and that was where it was held this past year. And from a few events that were, we thought we'd collect maybe a few hundred pounds of food. We ended up collecting 14 tons of food, which fed over 23,000 people in one weekend. And I mean, this isn't, like corn dogs and fries. This is like pulled pork, which isn't necessarily my jam, but it is a lot of other people's. And
I don't think it's jam at all.
sure.
I think it's delicious. But,
See? So partnerships are really important, and I think that more and more now that companies really want to align themselves in both doing good, this is one of the easiest ways that you can do good both in the community, for your environment, and for your bottom line, because you are saving money by when you're reducing and redistributing your excess food. And fortunately in the US now there's also tax deductions, like serious tax deductions available for corporations that donate their food through Copia's platform.
That's fascinating. And one thing that obviously an enormous topic, and one of the reasons we're all here, climate change, which we haven't touched on too far. Howard, how does that concern you in terms of provision of adequate nutrition for people?
Oh, more good news.
Woo!
I mean, which scenario do you want to look at? Every scenario that I've looked at, and we of course study them all because we are an agricultural company. Every part of the world that's suffering will suffer even worse. West Africa is going to suffer terribly. Parts of Asia are going to suffer. Parts of China, India. Look at California. We had a bad drought last year, but because of technology, which we referred to earlier, it was the largest tomato harvest ever in the history of the state. So there are ways around climate change. But again, it's the discovery of an institution like this one. Out at Biosphere, they have, a tropical area, and they have soil areas that they're looking at. You take that information and then you translate it through all of you and every graduate student that leaves and goes and works around the world, and then becomes scale because the country of Rwanda wants to make a deal and the money's on the table and they can do it. And that really is, I use the word uncommon collaborations. We're in partnership with the Tata Trust now, the largest NGO in all of India, from the great industrial concern Tata, which some of you may have heard about. And what is it about? Affordable nutrition for all. Now, my perspective is many of these things come at the wrong time. You need to have most interventions 24 months or so before a young woman becomes pregnant. They must have the best possible nutrition for neural tube development, which DSM can deliver. But if they could eat it by growing it and cooking it themselves in their backyards, it would even maybe put DSM out of business because they would be having the right nutrition at the right time. But that's years away from our perspectives. You have to understand that. And then for the 2 to 3 years after birth, a child must have this maximum amount of nutrition to develop. I mean, imagine looking at a group like this and thinking 37% of you will never be Einstein or Barbara McClintock or Usain Bolt. Just take 37% of you out of the room, or 48% out of the room if you want to talk about India. And it's going to take every possible scenario. And this is where there's no one answer to the question. Certainly, through the most advanced technologies in the world, we can probably increase the yield. This wonderful technology called CRISPR that Barbara Doudna at Berkeley, UC Berkeley, your alma mater, came up with, is a genius which has jumped us forward maybe 25 years in our ability to fight plant disease, including aflatoxin. So am I optimistic? I mean, I have to be optimistic, otherwise you would slog through doing the work that you have to do to fix the world. But the reality is, there is not 100% enthusiasm for fixing the problems by the people who should have the enthusiasm.
Can I just say something? So I think that you guys being here in the audience, since this is really for you, I think that's the first step. And I think that if you're going to fight any of these big fights that any one of us or anyone previously who's spoken has fought, you have to dedicate yourself to something that is so much bigger than you. And it can be overwhelming, and it can bring you down at times, but it's also the most fulfilling thing that you can do, because it's not work, it's not a job, it's a calling. And that's so much more different. And that's really what gets you through the hard times, and that's what enables you to get really great partnerships and opportunities like this. And so I think that if you're in the crowd and you believe in something very strongly, whether it's you starting your own organization or joining another person's, hint, hint, nudge, nudge,
You can come to DSM as well. There's nothing wrong with doing well and doing good at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, we're a for-profit company, so yes, I totally agree.
On the issue of climate change, obviously we know anthropogenic emissions, their role. Biofuels, I know you're very involved with this, Hugh. The kind of argument that's always trotted out about biofuels is that growing them is wasting food and wasting areas of land that could be used for food. Cellulosic ones are a little bit different. I wondered if you wanted to say a bit about what DSM's up to there. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we produce literally billions of dollars of product a year through industrial biotechnology, essentially using fermentation. And it's going to be great for me to go home tomorrow and talk to my kids about, I was talking to Adrian about elephant dung. They'll be very excited about that. And earlier this week, I gave a speech in the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is not necessarily known as a bastion of climate change mitigation and carbon pricing. No. And I stood there with corn stalks in one hand and elephant crap in the other. And I was giving them a speech about, how we can move away using circular economic principles from producing energy by fossil means or others to using things like industrial biotechnology to produce energy. So what we do in DSM is we can produce ethanol, not from the corn, right? That's what people eat. We produce ethanol from the stalks that are left over. And we use enzymes to break down the cellulose that a millennia of nature has made very strong, but we can break those down, extract the sugars, and then use a special yeast that we discovered in elephant dung to feed those sugars to and ultimately produce ethanol. And we can do that at scale, right? We were talking about scale. So we opened the United States' first cellulosic ethanol plant in Emmitsburg, Iowa in 2014, when fully scaled up can produce 25 million gallons a year. That's not insignificant from a size point of view. And from a greenhouse gas point of view, it's got 90% less greenhouse gas than gasoline. So this is a way that we can sort of branch off from our nutrition business using fermentation technology to produce ethanol from a very unique source.
Fantastic. Well, I'm afraid we are absolutely running out of time, but perhaps each panelist like to give 10-second wrap up. Komal, if you would like to start.
Sure. Well, we are looking to expand Copia and our mission, and we are in the Bay Area. And if you are looking for a job, definitely come find me. If you are also, more importantly, if you're a corporation, organization, or individual that has the ability to donate their excess food, or now you guys are equipped with the knowledge and letting people know that they should donate their food, I highly encourage you to do so and encourage others to do so as well. And find your calling. That's the most important, I think, piece of advice I could give.
Thank you. Howard.
I think the most important thing to take away is failure is completely acceptable. I assure you that any of our corporations, the three of us up here representing, the pile of failures is gigantic. Whether it's a product that misses the market or a technology. The first time they tried to ferment at DSM, it probably didn't work as well as it does today. But fermentate, when you take the notion of failure and say, I failed, I quit, the most advanced research facility in the United States called DARPA fails 7 out of 10 times. That's their standard. If you succeed 8 out of 10 times, the problems aren't hard enough. So remember that failure is acceptable. This is science. No one knew even what the thought was to solve the problem before you sat down and did it. And so I think this is a critical perspective to take away.
Thank you.
We're the biggest company you never heard of. I think you know a little bit about us now. Go check us out online. We operate in 60 countries. We're a multi-billion-dollar company. We want all of you innovative thinkers to come work with us. And it would be fantastic if you started tomorrow. This is what I would leave you with. The Stone Age didn't end because we ran out of stones. Disruptive technology came. So counter every argument you hear with, we have lots of oil, lots of coal, we have lots of sugar, with the fact that the Stone Age did not end because we ran out of stones. We can do things differently and get different results.
Fantastic. Please join me in thanking all our panelists.